Hello and welcome back to the course on Power BI. In the previous tutorial, we connected to our dataset, and today we're going to visualize our time series data. But before we proceed with that, I would like to prompt you to save your workbook. And why is that? Well, because saving your work at the very start before you actually start creating your visualization is a good habit to get into when working in tools such as Power BI, because that way you can, as you create the visualization, you can simply press Ctrl S and it'll save your progress, and you won't lose anything if your computer crashes or Power BI crashes for some reason. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to select the drop down here, select Save As, or just press Ctrl S on your keyboard and select where you want to save it and the name, and click Save. All right, that's done. So now we can proceed safely to creating our visualization. And what are we visualizing? Well, we're visualizing unemployment or long-term unemployment in the US from 2005 to 2015. And we already discussed this data set. We've got the period here, so that's our time series. Then we've got the different categories, so gender, and we've got the different age groups. And here we actually have the unemployed values. So let's go ahead and see how we can visualize this. First thing, we're going to take period and drag it into the chart. Then we're going to take unemployed and drag it into the chart as well. As you can see, Power BI has come up with a bar chart by default for us. Now we're going to change this to a line chart. So let's select line chart over here. And now we have a line chart for unemployed or long-term unemployment in the US for the years in our dataset. And as you can see, for every year, we've got a separate point on this chart. And what's happened is all of the rows for that specific year have been aggregated or have been summed up into this specific point. So for 2010, that's the sum of all the unemployed values in the unemployed column for the rows that are for 2010. And that's the same thing for 2008 and so on. Now, today we're going to discuss the two ways you can deal with time series in Power BI. And we've actually already talked about them previously, and this will be a good refresher, but it'll also really highlight the differences between the two approaches. And from after this tutorial, you will know exactly which approach you need to use in which scenario. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first approach is the show next level. So we want to basically, what do we want to achieve? We want to drill into our data set, and we want to understand if there are any patterns and trends and so on. So how do we drill in? Well, actually, there's three approaches. There's three ways to drill in. We've got the drill down button, but the drill down button just shows us individual, drills into specifically into individual records in our data set. That's not exactly what we want. We still want to see, we want more detail, but we still want to see the bigger picture at the same time. We want to have that bird's eye view. So we're left with two options. We've got the show next level and the expand next level. Now, we're going to start with the show next level. When I click show next level, as you recall, what happens is we were going to go down in our hierarchy here. So we've got year, quarter, month, and day. Right now we're at the year level. When you click show next level, we're going to go to the quarter level, and we're going to disregard the year level completely. Let's have a look. So when I click that, as you can see, we've gone down to the quarter level. And bear in mind, the axis here, the y-axis, doesn't start at 0. So that's why we're kind of like, you can see really how the chart is changing. It actually starts at 107 million. So what's happened here? Right now, we only have 4 quarters. And why is that? Well, because you'd expect that you would have more, right? We have about 11 years or just over 10 years in our data set, and every year has 4 quarters. So we should have over 40 quarters, over 40 points on this data set right now. But because we're disregarding the higher level and higher hierarchy, the year level, we're just going down to the quarter level. What we're doing is we're actually treating this axis or this this variable quarter not as a time series variable, but rather as a categorical variable. So in this case, so we have these 4 buckets: quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. And out of our data set, what we're doing is we're picking out we're checking every row. So is this row quarter 1 or quarter 2 or quarter 3 or quarter 4, regardless of the year. This one's quarter 1. All right, put in the quarter 1 bucket. This one's quarter 1. Put in the quarter 1 bucket. Quarter 1. Then this one is already quarter 2. Put in the quarter 2 bucket, and so on. So every row goes into one of these buckets, irrespective of the year. And it's very similar approach to what you would have with gender, right? With gender, you'd also just basically bucket up all your rows into either male or female, and then you would perform your aggregation on those buckets. So that's exactly what's happening here. So in this approach, the best way to think about it is we're dealing, when you select the show next level, you're dealing with your time series data not really as a time series, but more of as a categorical variable. That's important to remember. So summing up the values of unemployed people across different quarters really makes no sense if you're not taking into account years. When it would make sense is if you, instead of adding them up, you would take the averages, right? And then you could look for trends across quarters. Does the average unemployment across different quarters change, right? Is there a pattern? So let's have a look. The way to do it is in the values here, just select the drop down, and instead of sum, select the average. And so there, now you can see that the average unemployment, there is a pattern across the quarters. So across all of the years that we've had, those 10 years, the average unemployment spikes in quarter 3 and then drops down. And you can continue doing that. You can go to show next level again. And so here you can see there is some seasonality, right? So this is a chart that represents unemployment, average unemployment in each month across all of the years. So we're not taking into account year or quarter here, which is going at the month level. And you can see how unemployment changes. And you can see that there's a drop in unemployment in June. Maybe that has something to do with the school holidays. There's a spike in unemployment in July. Maybe that has something to do with school holidays as well. But basically, we can see a pattern. And that is one of those cases when you would actually use this show next level option and deal with your time series data as a categorical variable. So hopefully that makes sense. That was our first approach to dealing with time series data. Now we're going to go back up and we're going to look at the approach that we actually want to use in our challenge, right? So now we're going to change this back to sum. That's a sum of unemployment. And here what we want to do is, instead of show next level, we want to expand next level. And so when we click that, information about the higher level in our hierarchy is preserved. So here we've got year and quarter. And so now for every year, we actually have 4 records. So there is 2006 quarter 1, 2006 quarter 2, 2006 quarter 3, 2006 quarter 4. And as you can see, we basically, between this chart, we've just got years, and this chart, it's the same chart. We've increased the number of points on this x-axis, which is our time series. And this approach is actually dealing with the time series as a time series. This is how you intuitively think of a time series when you're dealing. You don't think of time as a category, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. You think of it as a continuous variable, and we're just basically drilling into it or increasing the number of points on our timeline. And that is done through this expand next level. And if we do it again, now we have 12 points for every year. So there's 2008, January, February, March, April, May, all the way to December. And then it goes to 2009 and so on. So this approach allows us to visualize the actual sum of unemployment, or the total unemployment, in a proper way. So now we can really tell how the total unemployment has been changing all the way from 2005 to 2015 continuously through this level of detail of a month. So we're looking at this whole chart at a monthly level of detail because that is the lowest level of detail in terms of time that we have in our visualization. So there we go. That's how we can deal with time series data. I hope that now you're quite comfortable with the 2 different ways that you can deal with time series in Power BI. They were the show next level, which is dealing with time series as a categorical variable, and it can be used when you're looking at averages and things like that. Or the expand next level, when you just want to increase the number of points on your timeline and actually deal with a time series as you would intuitively expect to deal with it. All right, so that was quite a lot of knowledge to take in. Have a play around with that and let that knowledge really sink in so you're comfortable with dealing with these 2 different approaches. And I'll see you next time. Until then, happy analyzing.